Warning. The following video contains scenes of graphic violence. Viewer discretion is advised.
The play ended to thunderous applause, every pony in attendance stomping their pleasure. The closing song had gone over very well, though Starswirl was a little unsure about the Heart Carol's lyrics. Still, it tended to be the simplest songs that stood the test of time, so even if the play were to be forgotten, the song might live on, spreading the message of friendship and togetherness. Having been granted glimpses into the myriad possible futures of Equestria through his own experimentation with travel in both time and dimensions, Starswirl was sure that such sentiments would be pivotal in times to come. It was tempting indeed to skip ahead in his own timeline to discover what might become of Celestia and Luna, but he feared learning too much about the mares they might become could ruin the relationship he had with them in the here and now. Celestia often seemed the more poised of the two, but once you got to know her, she had a somewhat silly and studious side that bordered on what younger ponies would consider geeky. Luna, the ever more distant and unapproachable, was actually extremely kind to animals and enjoyed sharing a good laugh, though this could lead to some very vexing pranks. It was these two he now sought as the great hall slowly drained of audience members.
Ah, Starswirl, a marvelous performance, wasn't it? I didn't know it would be so exciting,
said Celestia enthusiastically as the old unicorn made his way through the press of admiring nobles.
It was clever of you to sneak the new flag of the unified Equestria in at the end.
Don't listen to my sister. She was complaining about the flag's presence being inaccurate when our royal selves had not yet been introduced.
Luna rolled her eyes.
Given the overall tenor of the play, however, I very much doubt accuracy is all that important to the overall message.
If possible, it seemed that the younger sister had enjoyed the play almost more than her older sister. Her smile faded slightly as she saw the look on Starswirl's bearded face.
Pray tell, is something wrong, dear Starswirl? Was the play not to thy liking?
Oh, no. The play was wonderful, of course.
The old unicorn chuckled, doing his best to allay not only Luna's concern, but those of the nearby nobility as well.
I was simply hoping to have a word with the two of you. In private, perhaps?
Though the crowd was trickling out of the building, there were still many ponies on all sides. Such a request was ludicrous, or at least it would have been coming from any other pony.
Why, of course, Starswirl. We always have time for your valued advice.
Naturally, I agree with my sister. Shall you do the honors, or shall I?
By all means. Allow me.
Starswirl lit his horn, and a large cloud of smoke enveloped the trio. Dancing starlight swirled through the thick blue haze, dazzling those nearby, and leaving every pony gasping and coughing in mild dismay.
That was a bit showier than usual, Starswirl. Felt like making a grand exit.
They stood in the highest tower of Canterlot Castle. The air up here was frigid at the best of times, but right now it was downright freezing. Celestia and Luna both could not help shivering as the wind tugged at them. The few stars above that could be seen through the cloud cover twinkled merrily enough, but at this time and in this place they seemed far more distant and colder than usual. Starswirl, for his part, stood as if the elements could not so much as touch him, save for his cloak and long beard. The look in his eyes made the Alicorn sisters cringe inwards. The powerful unicorn was their friend, But he had also been something like a teacher to them. Clover the Clever may have been his apprentice, but she was not the only powerful little pony that Starswirl had watched over and guided. More than anything, they feared that a lecture was forthcoming.
No, fair Luna. It was merely the most expert speller I knew to get us away from the crowd. As you may have gathered, I have something of importance to impart upon you.
The old mage paused, taking a deep breath and gazing up into the frosty night.
But first, tell me, what do you two think of the weather?
Why, 'tis most glorious, though perhaps a bit bracing upon these high towers and ramparts.
I agree with Luna. It is rare for us to have ice and snow this early in the season. The Pegasi have outdone themselves.
The Pegasi have done nothing at all.
A flash of blue magic burst from the unicorn's horn, spreading across the sky and penetrating the clouds. An echoing, terrifying scream spread across the sky before it was blended with the howling wind. Something ethereal took shape just above the tower, like a ghostly horse outlined with ice and shimmering with snow. The apparition was there and gone in an instant, as a flaming heart took shape in the air and dispelled the chilly aura. But both the Alicorn sisters knew what the creature was on sight. They had been visited by a Wendigo.
Our frosty evening is no work of Pegasi.
But I don't understand. I thought you had said the Wendigos would keep to the northern wastes.
Celestia's brow knitted in worry.
That so long as we stuck to the principles of unity and harmony, they would have no negative emotions to feed off of here in Equestria.
I and my sister have kept to your principles, Starswirl. We have guided this fledgling nation through many trials already. We have not strayed from its founding edicts of love and tolerance for all pony kind.
Luna was flustered in her attempts to be heard over the rising wind.
I know.
There was a grim cast to Starswirl's face.
However, the Pegasi have been disturbed. Ever since we lost Private Pansy, it seems Commander Hurricane has abandoned our plans to instead pursue those of his own. In time, he will begin to rebel openly against you. We cannot afford a schism among the tribes at so early a stage in Equestria's history, lest we risk this realm being blanketed by the same frozen death as the old lands. The Wendigos are too numerous for us to keep at bay without preserving harmony and working together to overcome them. I'm afraid you may have to intercede in this matter.
Commander Hurricane has been distant since poor Pansy's tragic passing. But I thought he was merely taking time to grieve. I did not know he had so abandoned his duties.
Nor did I.
Starswirl gave a deep frown.
I'm afraid I've been overly absorbed in finding a cure for the candy curse. I worry there may be other spell work at play here. Old spells, unknown to unicorn or even alicorn magic. As much information as the journal Pansy recovered was able to relate to us, and as much information as we were able to glean from the Pegasi that cared for her before she turned. I'm afraid we're still in the dark as to say what can be done to stop this menace.
The unicorn's eyes drifted over the city below.
I fear that it may be my lack of progress that has led Commander Hurricane to consider more mundane and militaristic solutions.
Is this not as it should be? If there is no magical solution, and there is no apparent negotiating with this monster, this candy mare, then surely it is up to the military might of Equestria to put down this threat. The Pegasi, after all, traditionally defend the other pony tribes in times of peril.
Yes, Luna, but that is our job now. We are the guardians of Equestria. I believe I see why you brought us here now, Starswirl.
Celestia bowed her head low.
Though we spent so much time on it, and though it was truly delightful, our play alone cannot be expected to hold together our alliance. No, we are the guardians of Equestria, as its rulers, and it is time we dealt with matters to allay the fears of our people and to lay to rest the problem of this shadowy threat that looms over us all. For Commander Hurricane's sake most of all, it should be we who take on this burden.
Well spoken, Celestia.
A small smile brightened Starswirl's dour expression.
I confess, though I've made little progress in neutralizing the cure itself, I have considered other methods that might be able to help us thwart this monster.
Would they perhaps involve the Tree of Harmony? I've been doing more research on the symbols of the tree since Lua and I received our cutie marks. That they match two prominent marks on the Tree of Harmony can be no coincidence. I suspect that there are others out there who will also find that they represent certain elements of harmony, and that with their aid we might come to better understand the awesome power offered by that most ancient of artifacts.
In time, Celestia, I believe that will be true in time. But in the here and now, there are other solutions we could consider. In my studies with travels through time and dimensions, I have stumbled across a realm where magic does not seem to naturally exist. At first I dismissed the realm as introducing such a wild force as my own magic into the plane that is not adapted to its existence could have dire consequences. But I have come to second thoughts about this, however, and I think that it may prove a boon to us in the times to come. With its complete lack of magic, it's possible that it could have a dampening effect on any curse or magical creature that was banished there. This would have the double effect of removing the creature from Equestria as well as weakening it to the point it would pose no threat to even the other world.
Ingenious. Yet you're not mentioned this before? I fear an unspoken but is in our near future.
Starswirl's expression turned sour again.
It is true, Princess. I am afraid the portal to the realm I speak of is only open once every 30 moons. The last cycle ended not that long ago, so I'm afraid this would not be by any means a speedy solution, but rather one we could plan for and work towards over the coming months, which we can use to help combat this disgusting infection.
That is unacceptable!
Luna interrupted with a suddenness that startled Starswirl, causing the erudite unicorn to sputter to a stop in mid-sentence.
If this matter is as dire as thou portends, then we should act swiftly and stop this candied abomination. If I understand what you've been saying, she is less a living pony and more a living nightmare. Since taking stewardship of the moon and the night of Equestria, I have become acquainted with new powers that my vocation provides. As you said to us before, Starswirl, the spell to raise the moon rejuvenates and recharges my alicorn magic. But it has done so much more. I can now cast spells of transmogrification with ease, change my own shape and that of others like an ever-shifting shadow.
Her eyes glowed as she spoke, the night seeming to grow darker around them, lightning dancing through the snow clouds.
And yes, I believe I have learned something of how to deal with nightmares. I believe I know a faster way to handle this being that threatens Equestria.
That's good, isn't it?
Asked Starswirl uncertainly, not entirely sure it was. This was a side of Luna he had never seen before.
Quite good, I should think, but that is only the first step. The candy mare has already become a boogie-mare, striking fear into the ponies of Equestria by word of mouth as much as by deed. I think that poor Pansy was sacrificed to sow such fear amongst us. It is this unease that is likely responsible for our Wendigo's appearance here tonight. I think it would be wise to suppress the tales of the candy mare.
Forbidding the spread of such tales may have the opposite effect of what you desire, Princess,
said Starswirl matter-of-factly.
Then what do you suggest, Starswirl?
Luna's gaze unsettled the old unicorn slightly.
Perhaps we replace the tales with a new story. Maybe about you brave princesses and how you defeat the monster and how much you love and cherish your people to face such a nightmare. Once the deed is accomplished, of course.
He added as an afterthought.
Ha! I like this plan. 'Tis one of which I approve very much.
Luna tossed her head, once again her more cheerful self.
And who's to say, then?
Celestia's serious demeanor faded away as well.
Now enough of this skullduggery. I propose we get out of this cold and get ourselves some mugs of hot cocoa. It is still Heartswarming Eve, an official holiday if I recall the declaration, and we will still have many guests to attend to in the palace below. There shall be much merriment, and I am given to believe there may be a gift exchange as well. A novel idea, but one I hope becomes a tradition.
That sounds delightful, but I fear it may be, good old time for little ponies to be heading to bed.
Starswirl's age showed for the first time since they had arrived on the tower. Neither Luna nor Celestia bought the exaggerated frail old pony act for a moment. With a crafty smile, the powerful sorcerer vanished in another puff of blue smoke, leaving the sisters alone atop the Alicorn Citadel.
I swear, these pony folk are always sleeping through my beautiful nights. It strikes me as downright ungrateful. I shall have to do something about that as well in the future.
Well, a problem to be dealt with another time, dear sister.
Celestia gathered her smaller sibling under her sheltering wing.
For now, let us merely say to our guests and wish them all a happy Heartswarming and to all a good night.
A dusty mirror in a dimly lit room, forgotten under a layer of cobwebs, sat silently, almost expectantly. Unlike the other broken-down bits of furniture and scattered books, this item did not have the air of an abandoned object. Rather, the looking-glass almost seemed to be waiting, like a patient if annoyed companion whose compatriot has been late one too many times. A disturbance in the air caused the webs to shift, the dust to fall in a tiny waterfall-like cascade. The ancient, mummified corpses of long-dead flies and the spiders who caught them danced and twirled in a parody of their former lives. Without warning, a bright flash of light illuminated the storage room, sending tattered dust covers dancing like so many ghosts. The room was suddenly occupied.
It worked.
The cloaked figure grinned as her hooded eyes darted back and forth. This was all familiar. Good. The element of surprise was on her side, but she did not have a moment to lose. The pony moved, swift as a fleeting shadow across the dusty floor. With only a moment's hesitation, she pushed open the door to the storage room and stepped out into the palace halls. All was dark and quiet. It was the middle of the night here, just as it had been in the world that the cloaked figure had come from. There did not seem to be any guards about, which was all the better for her plans. Still, she moved quickly but cautiously through the hallway. The spell that silenced her hoofsteps would only work for so long, but if she was fast, she could snatch the element of magic before Celestia would be any the wiser. She could sense the power of the elements nearby, but they were faint. All she would need was a second. That stupid Twilight Sparkle who had replaced her in Celestia's heart was hopefully still sleeping.
And probably snoring her stupid fat head off, too.
It was odd how truly still everything was. There was not even a hint of a breeze, a breath of air. Indeed, the cloaked figure could not help but think that the edifice was not unlike a neglected tomb, a sepulchre long abandoned. Just how long had she really been gone? Was it possible that what had seemed like a few years to her had been ages on this side of the portal? Had she somehow miscalculated?
Where is every pony?
With a growing sense of unease, she set hoof into the main hall, and her breath caught in her throat. The palace was a wreck. The few remaining tapestries, torn to shreds, hung limply from the walls and archways. A shimmering carpet of jagged, multicolored shards was all that remained of the stained glass windows which Celestia had once cherished so dearly. Beyond those glassless apertures lay only darkness, as if something had blotted out every star in the sky. The cloaked mare was not sure if she was relieved or terrified when she discovered that the windows were merely blocked by piles of rubble. Apparently, the very masonry of the palace that had stood for time immemorial lay thick enough on the ground to bury what remained of the great hall. The buildings that had survived for over 1,000 years since Equestria's founding had been reduced to mere rubble. What had happened here? Had there been some sort of attack? Some terrible cataclysm? Or had the old citadel simply been left to the ravages of the ages and now lay in the relentless jaws of entropy?
Only one way to find out.
Deciding that the need to gather information now trumped her need for stealth, she risked a translocation spell. She only hoped that the balcony was still there. In a flash of green, not unlike the last rays of the setting sun, the hooded figure found her hooves on solid, if sticky, ground. The balcony still existed, though its shape was irregular and bizarre in the chilly moonlight. She had been right in one regard. It was indeed night. If the position of the stars were any indication, it was the right time of year as well. Indeed, even the correct era. But everything else was terribly, terribly wrong. Beneath the glow of a high, full moon, she could just glimpse the landscape through a thick pall of mist and fog. Equestria spread out below in a twisted parody of its former majesty. The land was luminescent in the dark, sparkling beneath a sugar-frosted coating that seemed to dust everything. The distant forests, supported by thick candy cane tree trunks, lifted glowing candied leaves to the stars. What should have been grassy fields stretched far into the distance in bright pink bubblegum shades. A green, gloppy sludge that passed for a river bubbled and fizzed along its banks. The very air was heavy and cloying, the scent of so many sweets threatening to suffocate the mare. And the city. Once proud and prosperous, Canterlot now lay in ruin. What few parts of it still stood were now bizarre, gingerbread versions of their former glory. Even the balcony upon which she stood, the refinements of the palace itself, all had been transformed into a confectioner's mockery of its once sublime beauty. A chill seemed to penetrate the cloaked pony's body from all sides, though it had nothing to do with the misty atmosphere, even if it was as cold as a Wendigo's heart. No, there was a deep, dark, ancient magic at work here, the kind that made every hair in her mane and tail stand on end. Lowering her hood, even Sunset Shimmer could not help but mutter to herself,
By Celestia's beard. What is going on?
Her red and yellow mane vibrant in the silvery light, Celestia's former apprentice felt all her dark ambitions evaporate as she looked down upon the wreckage of the once mighty pony civilization. What good had all her planning been? What use now did she have for a mind-controlled army? Did she really want to conquer this dump?
What happened here?
Had she waited too long? She had originally planned to invade before Halloween, but had stayed her plans to better cultivate her army. How long had Equestria been like this? She had not been home for more than information-gathering visits since she left in anger years ago. On her last trip here, after the summer sun celebration, when Luna returned, everything had seemed fine. Could she have prevented this? What of Celestia's vaunted student, Twilight Sparkle? Where was she while all this wreck and ruin was happening? What about Cadence, the pony chosen to be an alicorn ahead of the much more deserving Sunset? What of Luna herself? Surely the ruler of the night could have... A distant mountain rumbled suddenly on the horizon, interrupting her thoughts. Was it some kind of volcano? Was that what had blanketed everything in this unnatural candy shell? What truly bizarre feat of magic could spawn such a thing? Had Discord somehow been freed from his stone prison? No, this mountain was something else. As the unicorn watched, lights flickered all across the mountain as tiny blue flames sparked to life all along the craggy surface. The mountain shook again, this time causing the already crumbling city to pitch and heave violently, as though it were a ship caught on a stormy sea. The earthquake intensifying, it was all Sunset Shimmer could do to hold onto the balcony's railing as the mountain rose and seemed to blot out the night sky. The quakes came in a steady rhythm now, accompanied by a series of thunderous booms. Nearby buildings shattered into cookie crumb pieces, while a great exhalation of frigid air seemed to sweep away the fog. It was then that Sunset could see what the mist had been hiding. Bones. A thick carpet of them were strewn all across the city. The bare, naked bones and smiling skulls of long-dead ponies gleamed brightly beneath the pale glow of the moon. As the moving mountain loomed over her, Sunset could see that there were other polished skulls and fleshy heads set in the side of the candy crag, though there were far too many to count. Some even looked familiar. Wreathed in azure flames, the skull's jaws hung open in inaudible screams. It was none of this that held the unicorn's attention, however. No, it was the face. That horrible, hideous face that hovered just above the balcony, blotting out the sky. Beneath a mane of crimson tendrils, which cascaded like a waterfall down one side of the gargantuan, misshapen head, eyes that seemed to be the size of the moon glowed with malice and madness, focusing squarely on Sunset Shimmer. This was no bizarre volcano or mountain, but something far worse. In that horrible moment of realization that the Colossus was in fact looking right back at her, the thing smiled. Teeth as large as the palace's shattered spires pried slowly apart, and a long, thick tongue scraped across them, leaving a trail of translucent drool. Sunset Shimmer could just see a reflection of herself in one candy corn-colored tooth.
What? No! Get away from me! Get away!
After a quick, bloody crunch, the candy mare's laughter was the only sound that filled the dead world, that should have rung at this time of year with heartwarming carols and the laughter of uncorrupted children.
Happy heartwarming.
Sweet silver bells all seem to say, throw cares away, Christmas is here, bringing good cheer to young and old, meek and the bold. Ding dong, is their song with joyful ring, all caroling. One seems to hear words of good cheer from everywhere, filling the air. Oh, how they pound, raising the sound. Oh, hill and dale, telling their tale. Gaily they ring while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Merry, 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 merry Christmas. Merry, 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 merry Christmas. Gaily they ring while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Merry, 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 merry Christmas. Merry, 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 merry Christmas. On they send, on without end, their joyful tone to every home. Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Gaily they ring while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Gaily they ring while people sing songs of good cheer. Christmas is here. Merry, 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 merry Christmas. Merry, 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 merry Christmas. Merry, 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 merry Christmas. On they send, on without end, their joyful tone to every home. Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Ding dong, ding